Hello, everyone. My name is Javier Garza, and I want to say hello to the Brownsville ISD and the families of English learners. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do was go over some questions that kids are always asking me about being an author. Now, one of the most frequently asked questions is, why did I become an author? And what I tell students is, I became an author because I grew up my whole life surrounded by storytellers. I grew up surrounded by my grandparents, my dad, other family members that were always telling stories. They were always saying cuentos. I never met my great-grandfather, but everybody tells me he was a really, truly great storyteller. And really, I do the same thing that they did. I tell a story. The only difference between what I do and what they did is that I write it down. I put it down on paper. I still tell the story. I love doing storytelling. But I believe that by putting it down on paper, I get to share my stories with other people, even if I am not there. So that's the reason I became an author, because I grew up a storyteller. And I still am. I just write it down. Another question that I often get asked, what can I do to become an author? Well, that's a really good question that kids ask. And I tell them, if you want to be an author one day, there are 3 things you should do as a kid. The first one is the most obvious. If you want to be an author, you need to write. You write every day, because writing stories is kind of like riding a bike. First, you're a little wobbly, you might lose your balance, you might need little wheels to help you out for just a little while. But after a while, you're gonna get good on that bike. Some of you will get good enough to pop wheelies, show off in front of your friends, ride the bike without using your hands, even though that's the first thing your parents tell you you're not supposed to do. Writing is the same way. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. So write every day. And if you don't believe me that you become a better writer just by practicing more and more and more, take something that you write when you're in elementary school. Take something that you write in junior high. Take something that you write in high school. Take something that you write in college. And you're going to notice when you look over all the stuff you've collected, you've become a better writer. You've grown as a writer. The other thing that I also tell kids that they need to do is to read. Read as many books as you can, guys. Big books, little books, comic books, magazines. Read, read, read. Because when you're reading, guys, you're actually learning how to write. You're learning how to tell a story, how to make it be exciting, how to make it be funny, how to make it be spooky, how to make it be scary. And when you sit down to write, you're going to try to write like your favorite writer, whoever that person might be. But what's going to happen is somewhere along the way, and you won't notice it till after it's already happened, you stop writing like somebody else and you start to write like you. You start to tell the story in your own words, in your own way, in your own style. You have become the writer. So that's the answer to that question. Another question that I often get asked, when was my first book published? My first book was published in 2004, which I tell people that was like that was a long, long time ago when I think about it. 16 years. Wow, that's a lot. So the first book was called Creepy Creatures and Other Cucuys. It was a collection of scary stories that I heard as a kid growing up. The Vanishing Hitchhiker, La Llorona, The Devil at the Dance, and all these wonderful stories that I heard as a kid that eventually became stories in my book. And from there I wrote Lucha Libre, and I wrote other books that followed after that. How many books have I written? Right now I have 18 books that are published, and I have 2 that are going to be coming out. The first book was Creepy Creatures and Other Cucuys. I also wrote Lucha Libre, The Man in the Silver Mask, Juan and the Chupacabras, Zulema and the Witch Owl, Charro Close and the Texas Kid, Maximilian, The Mystery of the Guardian Angel, Maximilian and the Curse of the Fallen Angel, Maximilian, the Bingo Rematch, Maximilian, the Lucha Libre Club. I also wrote the books Vincent Ventura and the Mystery of the Chupacabras, Vincent Ventura and the Mystery of the Witch Owl, Vincent Ventura and the Mystery of the Diabolical Duendes. And there's other books that I've written, Rooster Joe and the Bully. I also wrote just one, Itsy Bitsy Little Bite, The Great and Mighty Nico, and other books that I love writing. I love sharing stories. Another question that kids often ask me is, what is the best part of writing a book? And I tell them that the very best part of writing a story, writing a book, is the fact that what's going to happen is that, the writer, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, he or she could be gone. But that book is still going to be in a shelf somewhere. Some kid is going to read it. And your story, the story in that book, will inspire that kid to write their own stories, to write their own books. And then hopefully that keeps it going, keeps the story going. It's somebody else writing a story, but your story inspired them to write their story. And really, that's what a storyteller wants to do. Just keep the story going. Keep it going. Keep it being told. What is the favorite book that I have written and why? My favorite book, truthfully, is Charro Claus and the Texas Kid. Now, the reason it's my favorite is because it is the one that is closest tied to me as far as something that happened. And I wrote that book, truthfully, as a bedtime story for my little boy. But let me explain how that works. What happened was that when I was little, I grew up with the idea of a Mexican Santa Claus. My dad took me to Valley Mart, and they were having a take your picture with Santa Claus day. And when you're little, it's exciting. It's Santa Claus. But when I got there, I noticed that Santa Claus looked different. Yes, he was dressed in red and white, but he was wearing a charro hat and a Mexican sarape with an eagle on its back. And I told my dad, Papi, that's not Santa Claus. He told, no, mijo, that's not Santa Claus. That's Pancho. That's his Mexican cousin. And I was like, Santa Claus has a Mexican cousin? Then Ms. Barrera, my English teacher, and I believe it was second grade, played a song for us. And that song was called Pancho Claus by Lalo Guerrero. And it was a beautiful song that went, 'twas the night before Christmas, and that's the way he would say it, Christmas. When all through the casa, not a creature was steering. Ay, caramba, que pasa? It was the story of a Mexican Santa Claus, and I loved it. Then when I grew up, I realized that I looked into this whole Mexican Santa Claus concept, and I learned there was a lot of people that called themselves the Mexican Santa Claus. But what none of these stories ever had was an origin. And I wanted to write an origin story to this Mexican Santa Claus. So I called him Charro Claus, and I wrote this story as a bedtime story for my little boy. But after I read that story, I thought to myself, you know what? This is a pretty cool story. I think I could make it into an actual book. And one of the reasons it's also my favorite book is because I wrote that story, Charro Claus and the Texas Kids, exists today because I wanted to write a bedtime story for my little boy. And I made the characters look like me and my son. Next time you look at Charro Claus and the Texas Kid, that looks like me, and that looks like my son at the time he was little. Now he's 16, super tall, taller than me, athletic in a way I never was. But, it's that's why that book exists. Just a big I love you to my son. Now, the last question that one of the kids asked was, what new books do you have coming out? I have 2 books. Well, I have 3 books. One just came out, Vincent Ventura and the Diabolical Duendes. But next October, I have 2 books coming out. A 4th Vincent Ventura, and it's called Vincent Ventura and the Curse of La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, in which, Vincent Ventura realizes that there is not 1, not 2, not 3, but many women in history that have been called La Llorona. And he ends up having to do battle with a really mean one. And the other book, also a Llorona theme, is called La Llorona Can't Scare Me. And it's a little boy named Damian who is not scared. Nothing scares him. He's not scared of La Llorona. He's not scared of La Lechuza. He's not scared of los duendes. He's not scared of the donkey lady. He's not scared of any cucuy. But that doesn't keep them from trying. And the whole night they are trying to scare him. But Damian is not afraid because Damian has a secret weapon that will make all the cucuys run and hide. And that is called The Llorona Can't Scare Me. And those are some of the questions that kids often ask me. But it's been a pleasure, guys. Keep reading, keep sharing your stories, and spend time, reading to your kids as much as possible. Because, like they say, one of my big things I tell people: tell me a story, dime un cuento, and share those stories with our familias. All right? Thank you. Muchas gracias.